Hello, everyone, and welcome to our weekly strategy session for first gen entrepreneurs. Nice to see everybody here. If you tried to attend a couple days ago, we ran into some technical difficulties on Tuesday. So we appreciate your patience on that front. But in the spirit of entrepreneurship, we are giving it another shot. So we're not going to let something like a technical glitch get us down, are we, Molly?
Absolutely not. Yeah, and my
Good.
apologies to everybody. I was telling Andrew that I even stumped the MacBook people at the Genius Bar, so that at least made me feel a little bit better.
Yeah. It's good to know it wasn't something silly. So, yeah,
Yeah,
that's always
right.
reassuring.
Yep.
Well, just to give a little context for those who are listening, again, my name is Andrew. I'm the founder of the First Gen podcast and community. It's the only place that delivers practical advice for the brave or crazy souls who were the first ones in their family to start a business. So, if that is you, this series is designed to give some beneficial advice, viewpoints, strategies every week that you can put to good use in your own business. This week, my guest, Molly, who you've now seen, is an employment and commercial attorney who guides businesses of all sizes through the ever changing legal landscape. Now, I can only imagine that with the attorneys that I know and have talked to, it's not something that just because you're an attorney, you automatically know how to run a business. Is that a fair statement, Molly?
That is more than a fair statement. Yeah. Yeah, we know a lot of the legal side, but that's about this much of running a business.
Yeah, understood. Well, I think that's true of most entrepreneurs. You have your technical skill, the thing that you know you're good at, that does not automatically translate to being able to successfully run a business in every other way. So, to that point, Molly is the founder of the Juris Consult Institute, where she trains and develops new attorneys in cohort styled classes. Now, this piqued my interest, Molly, because that's something I'm thinking about doing in the future with this first gen entrepreneurs community, cohort style classes where we can kind of help each other get through different phases of our business. So I thought this was really cool that you're doing that specifically for attorneys. So there's just a couple questions that I wanted to talk with you about today, see how we can get some value out there to the world. Does that work for you?
That sounds great. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So Molly listed three things that she wanted to talk about today that she can bring to the picnic, so to speak. They were accountability, connections, and perspectives. So, specifically, we're going to dive into how you can use each of those three things to grow your business, but then also how all three of them tie back into community and using community as a means of standing out. So, let's start with accountability. Molly, since our audience is first gen entrepreneurs, what role would you say accountability plays in business?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to first say thank you, Andrew, for letting me come on here and do this with you. This is such a cool concept that you've set up, and so I'm just excited for this conversation. But as far as accountability goes, I think that's what's going to make or break a business. No matter who you are, what industry you're in, what type of business you have, this area of accountability, I really break it into accountability of self and how you are accountable to others. And so I think for the self, the way that I've really done this is just simply through discipline. I know a book that is, everyone has read at this point is the Atomic Habits book. But I love that book, as many others do, because it really helps you get into this sense of, okay, what is my identity? And because I have this identity of someone who runs a business or someone who is disciplined, that's going to feed into all my other actions. And so when I can enter into this identity of discipline and enter into this idea that I am a disciplined person, that helps you be a disciplined person. And so I also used to view discipline as something that was like negative. Like it always felt like a burden or something really bad that I was just trying to do. And I think once I was able to really adjust my mentality on that and seeing it as truly the biggest asset or like tool in my belt in being an entrepreneur, it really changed everything for me. And now my discipline and my routine is it just keeps all areas of my life in check, which allows me to run a business to the best of my ability because I have that discipline. So I think that's really where it starts with self. And then I think with others, Accountability is truly what's going to push your business forward. So I don't know if you've heard again, another really famous study that was done, and I wanted to make sure to write this down. So it's the American Society of Training and Development, and they did that study on, um, what it means for you to meet with other people and how that can affect you. Have you read that study before, Andrew?
No, no, I've not heard of it, but ASTD, that sounds like something you pick up after, you go to war or something like
Yeah.
that, so no,
Yeah,
I've not heard
exactly.
of that.
Pretty much though.
Right.
Um, so they did this really cool study and they found out that you are 95% more likely to achieve a goal if you have a standing appointment with somebody. And thinking about that right there is insane. I mean, 95% more likely to hit a goal if you simply set up a recurring time that you're meeting with somebody. So when you're talking about accountability, like that has huge impacts in your life. And I don't think people really do that very often. Like I hardly know of anybody that's like, yeah, every, once a month I have this standing appointment with somebody to
Right.
hit this particular goal. But if you're 95% more likely to hit that goal, I mean, there's just so much power in that. And that's why I really fell back on these cohort styled classes. Because I think it's like the retention rate for people finishing online courses is less than 10%.
Mm,
So it's just abysmal. And which makes sense. It's like it's another thing I have to do. It's something I get excited about and then I never do it. Right. Going back to
right.
this like accountability piece. So when you can have this like standing appointment with people who are in a similar situation, and you can go through this experience with them, and then you all push each other forward towards this goal that you're trying to hit. I mean, I get
Yeah.
so jazzed about it because it's just crazy and it's something that I feel like people don't tap into very much. And so for me, it felt like I could probably make more money um, just putting up an evergreen course and just letting it run.
Mhm.
But to me, it was what is the best way that I can serve the people that I'm trying to serve? And I felt like the best way I could do that is by doing these cohort styled classes with them because I believe in accountability.
That's really interesting. It makes logical sense to me that the number
Yeah.
would go up, but I had no idea it was that extreme, 95%. And
I
I
know.
will just yeah, I'll just add to, I feel like a bit of a genius, to be honest, because, just yesterday, I was talking to a friend of mine who's working on this project, and he's got so many ideas in his head, and he's frustrated because it's just not really in a material way moving forward.
Mm,
And I was like,
yeah.
let's set up a recurring schedule. So now every Friday morning at 8:30, he and I have a phone call scheduled. We're going to keep pushing the ball down the field. And I came up with that completely on my own. So I feel like a genius. So
You're a genius. You are the ATSD.
yes, yes, I suffer from ATSD
Yes,
as
you
well.
suffer
Yes.
from
That's
ATSD. No, but
that's
I
awesome.
mean, I love that you do that. I don't think many people even offer something like that, Andrew, to be honest. Like, a lot of people are not willing to give up their time. But man, there's just so much power in it. And I wish that we would come together more and recognize the power, especially with a stat like that. I mean, that can change your life if you let it.
Yeah, that's really, really a great point. So,
Yeah.
to me, who comes to my mind in terms of entrepreneurs is solopreneurs. I think
Yeah.
when you're solo, it's really easy to just kind of get stuck in your own hunt. It's a lonely journey. So, how do you
Mhm.
think a solopreneur can really take advantage of this concept and benefit from it?
Well, I'm a solopreneur. And so I'm in it every day like you all are. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm making mistakes along the way, like a lot. But I'm just trying to figure it out. So I think, when I think about what you're doing, Andrew, with first generation entrepreneurs, I mean, even myself would benefit greatly from that. I mean, it's hard to find groups like that. Um, where there is a buy-in and a level of commitment from all of the members and not just this like passive commitment, but a true active commitment that you're giving not only to the people that you're with, but to yourself. So, I mean, this is something that I'm, actively searching for and looking for as well, because I see the power in it. And right now, I'm simply trying to offer it to the people that I'm serving, but I myself need it as well.
Okay. So I'm going to take a minute, swap
Yeah.
screens here, and say I did not put Molly up to this. That was the most perfect commercial for what I'm working on with this community. So I swear that was not scripted. That was genuine. So now we'll switch back to Molly. Thank you for your attention. All right.
Go,
So
Andrew.
let's, yeah. Seriously, we'll talk afterward because
Yeah.
that's exactly what I want to hear. So let's talk about your next point then, connections. I That's one of the things to me that as a first gen entrepreneur, not only did I not kind of have that mentorship of how to start and run a business from the get go, but I also was not handed a network,
Mm,
connections. My parents couldn't say, "Oh, hey, here's an attorney, here's a lawyer, here's some, pull some strings for me." I had none of that, so I'm starting from scratch. So I think a lot of people understand that having connections is obviously a good thing. But
mhm.
what do you think it can do for someone who's actually intentional in their strategy for leveraging those?
Yeah, I mean, it can change your life. And I don't mean that in a cheesy you can accomplish
Right.
anything type of a way, but I mean this is what I preach about every day on LinkedIn, and the other platforms that I use is community. Well, I'll break it down this way. Community can change your life in the ways that it's not going to allow you to feel less lonely, right? We're in this like massive loneliness epidemic still.
Mm,
We're all still trying to like put the toothpaste back in the tube a little bit
right.
when it comes to like work and how we're doing things now, and we're in this kind of like teeter totter of moving forward while also bringing some of like what was with us, and we're very isolated still. And so even though Andrew, you and I can connect and we can do cool stuff like this, like it, we're still not in person and meeting, right? And so
Hmm.
I think when you're intentional about creating community, um, man, it just provides breath in your lungs, right? Like there's those conversations that you walk away from and you're like, it was fine. And then there's
Right.
conversations where you walk away and you're like, that was amazing. I feel so fired up. And so much of that comes from just asking each other good questions. And so I think to like answer that question of how do you be intentional about it, it's being consistent and asking other people good questions, right? And I think this is like another high horse I have, so I apologize about that. But I think we have lost the art of asking each other good questions. And when you don't ask people good questions, you're not getting um, to the root of what's going on with that person and being able to provide that connection. So, an example is, I work with new lawyers, and new lawyers are in it. They are trying
Hmm.
to figure out how to practice law. They're realizing that law school didn't teach them how to practice law. There's this huge learning curve they're going through. They're stressed out, they're anxious. It's affecting, mental health, physical health. I mean, all of this stuff stems from it. And simply being able to connect with another new lawyer and saying, I know exactly what you're going through because I'm going through the same thing. And that's only going to come through vulnerability, right? This is like what Brene Brown has been like yelling at us for the last decade, like vulnerability, vulnerability, vulnerability.
Hmm.
Um, and that's really hard, especially in a professional setting. So
Right.
I always tell people that you can't just your community are not your coworkers. I'll just say it that way.
Right.
Your
Right.
coworkers are people that you respect and you enjoy being around, hopefully, and you can build some really cool relationships with, but they are not your community. Your community is the people that you're intentionally building relationships outside of your workplace so that you can go to them and say, hey, what does your bonus structure look like? How much are you getting paid? What sort of diversity initiatives do you have? Like, we have to be speaking to each other for ideas to feel less lonely with each other, which is so powerful. And to walk away, Andrew, with that like breath in our lungs. Like, and community can do all of that for you, which is only going to make you better at your job.
Yeah,
That was
that's
long
awesome.
winded, but there you go.
No, I think that's a phenomenal answer, and I'm glad that this is being recorded because I'm going to write some of these down and absolutely steal them for the content I'm using to promote my community. Because I think
Yeah.
you're hitting the nail on the head, and you're putting it so much more eloquently than I do. So that's perhaps to be expected. But one way that I've been thinking of it is, if we've got, in my instance, first gen entrepreneurs, many of whom are figuring this out as they go, right? But if we all get in a room together, even if it's
Mm,
the blind leading the blind, that's okay because at least you're not
yeah.
alone, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than feeling like you're blindfolded, walking through a forest, about to fall into a pit at any moment, right?
Right.
Um, and then add to it the fact that you can have honest conversations like you just described. That was a mistake that I made in my entrepreneurial journey in my IT business, because in the early days I lacked that community. I
Mm,
would turn to my spouse and ask her questions that, frankly, she didn't know the answers to. Sometimes
right.
I would turn to my employees and ask them questions that, frankly, that's not what they're here to answer. They didn't know, and
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
stressing them out by asking it, right?
Yeah.
So thinking of community as a separate container, a place that you can go to get the real answers to, kind of your most important question. That's really key. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. I'm laughing a little bit too, Andrew, because if my husband were here, he would tell you that the poor guy, I share all my thoughts with him and I'm like, "Why don't you have the answers to these questions that I need?" He's like, "'Cause I'm
Right.
not a business coach. I don't."
Not my job,
I
not his
know.
job.
I
Yes,
know.
that's exactly right. That's exactly
Yeah.
right. All right, so let's move on to our last one about perspectives. You mentioned that having a diverse perspective will help you to grow. It'll help to push growth within your company. So can you kind of just unpack that a little bit? What you mean by that?
Yeah, I think the most dangerous phrase anyone can mutter is, "This is the way that it's always been done."
Mhm.
And unfortunately, in my world, in the legal world, that happens a lot. And we can get really stuck in this because I found one way that something works. I think that it has to be the way that it works. And that's just not true and incredibly dangerous for all of these people that we're trying to retain and serve and bring alongside. And so I think the coolest thing about entrepreneurship for me anyways is, I come from again the legal world, which is very much structures that were built for men and by men, and they were not built for anyone else. And so being able to create a company and an organization and a culture that from the very beginning is built for more than just one type of person is so powerful and like the coolest thing ever. And so when you get to bring others alongside in this journey that you're on, I hate it when I say journey. I sound like I'm on The Bachelorette, but um, this like yeah, just this journey that you're on. It's we are all better for it if we can get different ideas and different perspectives. And to me, that's only going to make my business better. And I think it would be foolish of me to not do everything within my power to make it an organization that has a massive, just diverse perspectives. And yeah, there's just power in that. And so I think that's what pushes us forward is that we're not stuck in this like, this is how it's always been done. So this is how it should be done.
Right.
But giving people the space to, even for me, of saying, like, "Hey, Molly, I don't think this is the best way this should be done." And for me to say, wow, yeah, you might totally be right. Can you tell me more about that? And then for us to like make a rational business decision about it,
Right. Right.
and instead of this like defensive, oh my gosh, they're attacking me and my business and my value. It's like, no, they're trying to make this the best it can be the same way I am.
Right.
So let's move forward in that.
So this is interesting. A friend of mine, Andy, put in the chat just now. Check this comment out. Just had a conversation this week about this is how it's always been done. Absolutely mind-boggling to me when this comes out of the mouths of people who see marginal or average results. Do you think that rings true?
Yeah, I mean, Andy, I hear you. I have been there. It is mind-boggling. And you would think that someone coming to you with a very, I'm sure, was a very well thought out, passionate plan or idea or whatever that might be, um, for the response to be anything along those lines is just, it's just sad. I mean, I think there's a lot of sadness there. I think there's a lot of frustration and anger there. And it's just not going to push that organization forward at all. And that's going to lose them money. Like it just will at a certain point because someone else is going to come along and do it better or more efficiently or, whatever. Yeah. So I'm sorry you had to have that experience, Andy, but I feel that deeply.
Yeah. Well, if I know Andy, he's adapted and overcome that situation already. It's Friday. It's
Yeah.
probably in the rearview mirror. He's figured it out. But
Yeah, I'm sure.
nonetheless, thanks for throwing that out there, Andy. Here's another interesting one. And apologies to anybody watching this. See how it says LinkedIn user? I've not cracked this nut yet. I don't know why, but
Mhm.
sometimes it's just kind of anonymous. A buddy of mine, Derek, commented on the last one of these I did, and he was the one showing up as LinkedIn user, even though we're
Mm.
connected. So whoever you are, stranger, maybe you're Derek, maybe you're someone else, but this is really, really appropriate, I think, given our conversation, because we're talking about connections and the importance of those. And they're saying that increasingly conversion follows connection, not the other way around,
Hmm.
which I think is
Yeah.
interesting. Have you observed that yourself, Molly?
Um, yeah, I think so. I think, I kind of wanted to break this out a little bit more too. I saw this comment earlier of when we're thinking about connection too, I also think about connection with my audience that I'm trying to build and connection with people who are in the same spot as me, right?
Okay.
Donald, this is Donald Miller. I love all of his stuff. If anybody's read some of his stuff, but he talks about how when you're building an audience, you want vulnerability and authority. And I think that is so true. So, like, you have to have this sense of vulnerability when you're trying to connect with an audience, but you also have to be an authority figure in some way too, right? Because otherwise, it's like, why am I following
Right.
this person? you
Right.
know,
Yeah, it's got to be
like giving
relevant.
that
Yeah.
sort of yeah, giving that sort of value. But I think on the like, um, uh, just the like parallel connection of someone who's going through the same thing as me, it's got to be like consistency and vulnerability. So it's got to be this intentional, like I'm reaching out to this person on a consistent basis and being vulnerable with them on a consistent basis, so that we can like bypass all the just excuse my language, but like bullshit.
Sure.
And that we can like actually get to the core of talking about what's going on, talking about real solutions, talking about real problems. Um, and I think all of that like comes back around to this comment of conversion and connection.
Yeah. No, I think that makes perfect sense. And in my personal experience, I've been active on LinkedIn since March of this year.
Yeah.
And in that time, I think I started with like 1,500 connections or followers, which is
Yep.
such a weird thing to say followers. That
Yeah.
bugs me. Side note, but and I'm at like 5,600 right now. So there's like
Yeah.
4,000 more people every time I post potentially who can hear what I have to say. Um, if I were trying to actively convert those people
Yeah.
before I make connections,
Yep.
there's just no way that number would have risen at the pace that it has, number one.
Yep.
Number two, I would lose trust with people,
Mhm.
because it's like we're all so overwhelmed with trying to be sold to all the
Mm.
time, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and someone can reach out to me, and if they just kind of hit me with something that they're selling before they've, formed a connection,
Yeah.
it might even be something I need, but I'm so turned off I
Yeah.
don't even, pay attention to it. But
Yeah.
on the flip side, if you take that time to build connections with no agenda and just get to know people, it's
Right.
amazing. It's overwhelming just how much people look to help you and,
Yeah.
ask you what is it you're doing. And if it's a good fit for
Right.
them, then you convert them.
Right. Yeah, there's something like, I tell this to the lawyers that I work with, that you have to have at least 8 touch points before someone will even consider, like, having a conversation with you, let alone, like, buying something from you. And so, like, when I'm talking to them about that, it's like, yeah, how are you getting those 8 touch points? Like, it doesn't always have to be this huge heavy lift, right? Of I'm doing this live event or I'm whatever. It can be as simple as a LinkedIn post or a newsletter or whatever. But you have to have those 8 touch points before you can even,
Right.
get on the inside with somebody and even have a conversation with them. So I think that's really, really wise.
Yeah. Well, and to the person who commented that earlier, I'm reading between the lines, but I think part of what they meant too was genuine connection.
Yeah.
If you can establish that first, the
Yeah.
conversions will come.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great way to help build community, in turn building connections, which in turn
Yeah.
builds conversions, and I don't know, all the way around. So,
Yeah.
well, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about, Molly, or add to the conversation today?
Um, yeah, like I just want to go off of this like conversion thing. 'Cause now this has my wheels turning. But um one of the biggest things that stopped me initially from putting myself out there and like starting to market and write every day was that I didn't have everything figured out. Like
Yeah.
I was like, I have to come to the internet with this perfect package and this perfect offer. Otherwise, like, why would anybody want to listen to me? And again, to this point, I have found the exact opposite. I have spent quite a bit of time just building an audience and just connecting. And it is remarkable the amount of people that reach out and then they're actually interested and actually want to have a connection with you. And then even through that, when I hop on calls with people or whatever it is, I'm not selling them anything. I'm offering help and I'm offering advice. And then at the very end of the call, I always say, how can I help you? What can I do for you? And almost every time they say, well, I saw that you have a course, or I saw that you have this, and it's like you let them kind of, come to you almost. And it's, but that's what feels most genuine to me.
Well, I think it's twofold. I've had the same experience. There's this tendency to let perfection get in place of progress,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Um, and not only does that inhibit progress, which in itself is a pretty big problem, right?
Mhm.
But the part about just putting yourself out there, to the world and being genuine, especially when it's obvious you don't have it all figured out,
Right.
by default makes you an authentic person, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you and I are literally talking to the world right now and
Yeah.
have no idea who's all listening to this. And we had technical issues and we're figuring it out as we go. And
Yeah.
it's like, if nothing else, the people watching this will come away with the fact that Andrew and Molly are in fact humans and,
Yeah. Right.
care about people and just want to help.
Yeah.
So I think the third aspect too is that the people who are kind of following your content, they can kind of watch as your audience grows, watch as the
Mhm.
quality of your stuff goes up over time. I think that just helps kind of build some loyalty in your network, and if
Yeah.
anything, it just strengthens it. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I'll just end with this too, Andrew. I know we're running out of time here, but if anybody's thinking about, starting or they're in it or whatever, I think back to what this whole conversation is about, I would just encourage you to think about community. I think this is truly the thing that will make you stand out. I think it's the way that you're going to have the most impact to the people that you're trying to serve. And I think it's the most fun way to do this job, to be honest, because it can be
Yeah.
very lonely and very difficult. And having this like community of awesome people that you're trying to serve is just very life giving. So I would encourage everybody to do it.
That's awesome. So I'm going to put this up on the screen. If you want to get in touch with Molly, just real quick, I
Mhm.
think it's implied, but let's be explicit. Who is your target audience? Like, who should contact you?
Yeah, so I work with new lawyers. So this is typically anybody in their first 3 to 4 years of practice. I work with them on litigation skills, and then I work with them on how to build a book of business.
Okay. All right. I love that short and sweet, and
Yep.
there's no ambiguity there. So that's awesome. And now I'll put up my little ticker. Just firstgen.biz is the website that I've got set up. I will preface this by saying none of my stuff is actually live yet. I'm still building behind the scenes. I'm just kind of raising awareness for what I'm trying to do. But basically, if you're a side hustler, a solopreneur, or a small business, definitely check out firstgen.biz. You can drop your email address there. It puts you on the waiting list. As the newsletter, as the podcast, and as the community are released, you'll be the first to hear about it. So that's where you can do that. And Molly, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining me today. I personally learned a few really salient points about community and the benefits of doing that. So it's obvious you know what you're talking about. So thanks for
Hmm.
your time.
Yeah, well, thank you for inviting me. This has been great. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.